You're listening to Permission To, the podcast where we dive into the science and soul of owning your worthiness as a perfectly imperfect human being. I'm your host, Sam Dew, psychotherapist, positive psychology coach, mama to a beautiful 5-year-old Amelie, and passionate advocate for living an inspired life. My aim is to show you that you have full permission to own your worthiness so that you can embrace your true nature and begin walking boldly toward your dreams. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Permission To. I am recording this one from my office, and yesterday I had my first retreat in my home for my program Soft and Successful. There was 6 of us in total, and I don't know, I just feel the beautiful energy of the women in business that were at this retreat yesterday in my room still. And I'm looking at a beautiful bunch of flowers that I treated myself, as well as also smelling an incredible musk stick flavored candle. Shout out to Lucy at Little Sparks of Joy Studio. This is just the most incredible smelling candle. I wish that I could just beam the smell to all of you, but if you're not already following Lucy, make sure you are and order some candles because they just smell so good. So anyway, random intro there, but yesterday's retreat really got me thinking about how one of the biggest things I support women with is how to stop overloading themselves, how to stop just making their lives so full and so busy and always putting themselves at the bottom of their priority list. And what I'm noticing is that the majority of women that I attract, they already know that they're quite sensitive or introverted, or just that they need more downtime than society maybe advertises or tells us is normal. I mean, let's face it, most of us need more white space and more rest than we're encouraged to have. But here's the thing, they know that they need it, they know that it's good for them, but they have so much trouble actually giving themselves permission, allowing themselves to rest, allowing themselves to kind of simplify their lives. So today I thought I'd share a little bit about, the 4 reasons why I think women, and particularly women in business, tend to overload themselves and overcomplicate things and put their own needs right at the bottom of the to-do list. And this is my perspective as a therapist. Before I dive into it, I did just want to do a little shout out to my biz bestie Jess, because some of you may already know that I've been doing a side podcast with Jess called The Slowdown. So if you are a woman in business and you want to hear from me, but also from an incredible business strategist, then make sure you check out that podcast. At the moment, we're in the middle of marketing our mastermind, Slow. The next round is kicking off in April, and we're already over 50% sold out. But because we've realized that so many women in business do have trouble with their relationship to work and with their relationship to their business, they have trouble with rest and play, and sometimes they know that they need to simplify their business, they know they need to soften into success, but they find it really hard to do that on their own. So Jess and I are offering 5 free 30-minute coaching calls to any woman in business who really has that desire to kind of slow down and sink into the softness. So if you're listening, we suspect those calls are going to get snapped up pretty quickly, but send me a DM or an email and I'll see what I can do. We would love to have you. And it's very, very relevant to this podcast. That's why I'm sharing. So let me dive into the 4 kind of main reasons why I think a lot of us women are overloading ourselves and having trouble prioritizing ourselves. So firstly, my background in CBT, we look a lot at different thinking styles. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for those who don't know what that is. We look a lot at different thinking patterns and different thinking styles. And what we know is that our brains, they like to be right. So if you have had a belief like I need to work hard, or business is complicated, or you have to work hard to be successful, if your brain has thought that for a really, really long time, even if that's an unhelpful thought, your brain doesn't like to be wrong. This is what we talk about as confirmation bias. So your brain is going to want to seek out things that confirm what you already believe to be true, because as I'm sure you've all experienced, like realizing that you've been seeing the world in a way that's unhelpful, or that there's another way to look at something, that can be quite painful. It can be quite distressing to be like, oh, there's another way to look at it. I mean, sometimes we experience excitement when we have those, aha moments, when we have those shifts. I support a lot of my clients in Permission Granted to have those kind of aha moments and those shifts. And sometimes it's really exciting, but sometimes it's also really tinged with grief. Like, oh, wow, like I've been making my life a lot harder than it needs to be because I believe this thought for so long. And if I change it now, it's like, oh. So just know that your brain does like to confirm what it already believes, and it will filter out information that contradicts what you already believe. So if you already believe that you have to work hard to be successful, or that rest is bad, or those kind of beliefs, your brain is going to have to proactively kind of choose to look for different neural pathways, and it can be like really, really uncomfortable to do that. And that's why, we need to kind of allow ourselves time to create those new neural pathways. Like those little 1% shifts I'm always talking about. It's like one thought at a time, one day at a time, and obviously the more you rest, the more that you're shifting those neural pathways, because your brain's like watching you resting and going, oh, okay, it's all right to rest. The second reason that I believe that we find it really hard to slow down, to prioritize ourselves, is because our brain's number one priority is keeping us safe. And that's why sometimes even when you really want to do the thing, like let's say you really want to, start a public speaking business, or you really want to launch that new business, or change your niche, or I don't know, go like scuba diving, something that you really, really want to do, but it feels scary and it feels new. Our brains will often come up with like so many different reasons why we shouldn't do that. And that's because, our survival instinct is always to keep us safe, even when actually safe isn't that good for us. And it probably sounds counterintuitive, right? Like, but my brain stopping me from resting isn't keeping me safe, but your brain thinks it's keeping you safe. And so, because for so many of us, we are most familiar with being busy and rushing around, rest can just feel so uncomfortable. And this is on the nervous system level too, right? Like where our bodies get used to what they're used to. And so if you go from like working a 9 to 5 and like rushing around, like let's say when I was a hospital social worker, if I went straight from being a hospital social worker, like just working flat out, to working for myself, only seeing a couple of clients a day, you might think, oh, that sounds so much nicer, but my nervous system probably wouldn't have been able to cope with like those sudden shifts. It's almost like I had to kind of slowly, I moved to a not-for-profit and I did more counseling work, and my work slowed down a little bit. And then I went into private practice, and like the shifts have kind of been a lot more slow and gentle for me. And I just feel like my body wouldn't have known what to do with itself if I'd gone from one extreme to the other. So I think that's really important to know, that our brains want to keep us safe, and our nervous system feels most comfortable with what is familiar. Even if we know, like if there's a part of us that knows what's familiar and what we've always been doing isn't good for us, it doesn't mean that we're not still going to feel scared. And I think I really want to normalize that, because I've worked with a lot of clients who are highly sensitive like myself, or who are anxious or overwhelmed. And sometimes like deep breathing, sometimes meditation, sometimes those things can be a little bit distressing. at first. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do them, but it just means that you might need to do other things first. So in terms of nervous system work, sometimes we have to get all the energy out first, like shake it out or dance it out, get rid of some of that energy before we can then do more of the like calming, soothing work. But I think that we don't talk about that enough. And I've had so many clients come to me really distressed, like, oh, the belly breathing I tried to do, or this suggestion, someone suggested that I meditate, and there must be something wrong with me because I'm just finding it so hard. So I just really want to normalize, if you do find relaxation hard, if you find meditating on your own, if you find that you put an hour of white space in your diary and then actually you just can't relax even though you've got nothing on, I just want to normalize that and say there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that that's what you're more used to and what you're more comfortable with. You're more comfortable with being busy and rushing around, and it's just going to take time to unlearn that. And of course, like, you can guess what I'm going to say, being really compassionate and really gentle with yourself as you try to make these shifts is really, really important, because you don't want to be like really hard on yourself because you're having trouble relaxing, because that's so counterintuitive, right? So the third reason why I think a lot of women find it really hard to prioritize themselves and to slow down is because of modeling. So our relationship to work is so often modeled by our early childhood experiences. In Permission Granted, we'll often do like a lot of journaling around, like, this is a really interesting question to ask yourself, like, what lessons did I learn in my early experiences of life? Like, what did my family teach me about work ethic, about rest, about play? And for many of us, we had mums who were incredibly self-sacrificing, who didn't have any support, who just got on with it and did what they needed to do to survive. And of course, like, when we look at our early experiences, it's never about criticizing our parents or like the past generations, because they've always done the best that they could with what the resources they've had. But it is true that for many of you, and for me included, we never saw a well-rested woman. We never had a woman kind of model for us that it's normal to like go for a weekend away from your children, if that's what you want to do. Not all mums want to, but a lot of mums do. Or like, even before I had kids, like, I never would have thought that, hey Sam, why don't you work 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week? Like, now I work part-time in my business, but there's always a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I'd done that before I became a mum. But that thought would have never, ever even entered my mind before I became a mum and before I started my own business and did so much of this inner work. I never would have even considered that it was an option for me to work 4 days a week. Obviously, the system's not set up that well to encourage a lot of us to work part-time, but also I was just really taught to work hard. And yeah, even in my 20s, there were years where I was working full-time as a social worker and then studying on the weekends, and just working so much and working so hard. So I think that it is important to kind of, do a little bit of journaling, do a little bit of reflection around like, well, what did I learn in my childhood about work? Where does my work ethic come from? And by the way, I'm not saying that hard work is bad either. I'm saying that sometimes we might have a problem with resting and slowing down. So yeah, if you got told to toughen up, to push through, that you needed to work really hard, then those things are going to be there with you when you're trying to rest. And it's just really important that you're aware of them so that, again, you can give yourself compassion if you are having trouble resting, if you are having trouble slowing down. And the last but not least, I did really want to acknowledge the systemic issues here. Like, for some women, it's actually about Maslow's hierarchy. And if a lot of people are under financial stress at the moment, right? So if you're having to work like more hours than you actually desire to, or more hours than are good for you, but it's actually for financial reasons, it's because we live in a world that's gotten more expensive, or perhaps it's because, you're a mum and you don't have any childcare, or it's really hard for you to get childcare, or you don't have any family support. I did want to acknowledge as well that I think it's really important to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that it's very hard to prioritize rest and relaxation if you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't know, how you're going to pay the bills, or if you're not feeling financially secure. And obviously that's a very different scenario to what I'm talking about in terms of your inner world. But we do need to be, I think, more mindful of, that for some women actually rest isn't possible, and there's so many things about that are not right and are not okay. But just in case anyone is in that situation right now where actually, finances are hard, or there's stuff going on and they don't have any family support, and so it's not even that they have resistance to rest, it's that they actually can't rest. I wanted to acknowledge that is, a systems issue, not a you issue. And so I think that that's really important to not internalize those things that are out of our control as well. So what you're probably hearing from all of these reasons that I'm sharing, and these are just some ones that came to me really easily as a therapist and a coach. There are so many more reasons why women can find it hard to rest and to slow down. But if you take anything away from this episode, I want it to be like, you're not alone if you find rest hard, if you have resistance to rest and to slowing down, you're not alone. I find so many incredibly wise, beautiful, soulful women who still deep down find it really, really hard to rest. And so there's nothing wrong with you. It's part of the human experience, and sometimes change just takes time and we have to make lots of little shifts. So yeah, just be kind to yourself if that's what you're navigating. And I would love to hear from you and hear how you're going. How are you going with changing your relationship to rest and to slowing down? And as I said, because this has been a real theme in Slow the Mastermind, and in a lot of the other work that Jess and I are doing in our businesses, we did decide that we would love to offer 5 of these free 30-minute calls to really support you to simplify your life and your business and to slow down and really sink into that softness. So if you would like to claim one of those spots, please send me a DM or send Jess a DM. I'll put all our details below in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. And ultimately, as always, you have the permission slip within yourself. You can absolutely give yourself permission to simplify, to do less, to slow down, to prioritize yourself. And whilst you're giving yourself that permission slip, be really compassionate with yourself if it is taking longer than you would like to make those changes, because I think that's very normal. It's very human. And I've shared all those reasons above as to why you are finding it hard. So yeah, know that you're not alone. I have been through that journey too, and my relationship to rest isn't perfect either. So we look forward to hearing from you soon. I'll be back again soon. And yeah, I might see some of you on one of those free calls.